Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard, and as always I'm here to share my journey of growing my own food in my allotment and my garden. Now, it's been another busy week here in Littlehampton, a real mix of wild weather, plenty going on down on the plot, and of course the bees are keeping me on my toes. I've been making the most of this early June growth spurts, tackling weeds, mulching, sowing, and generally trying to stay one step ahead of everything that's shooting up. Now, coming up in today's episode, I'll take you through what I have been doing on the allotment this week, including how the potatoes have been recovering after that late frost, and the battle I'm having with the waist-high weeds along the boundary. I've also got a lovely early summer recipe to share with you, something simple, fresh and straight from the garden. And later on, back in the pod and shed, we will be talking about successional sowing and how to keep food coming all summer long, how often to sow different crops, and what you can still sow right now here in the UK. Plus there's going to be a little update on the beets because there's some exciting progress there too. So let's get started. Well, we start this week off in the kitchen garden. It's the beginning of June and we've had that classic British mix of heavy rain, strong winds and then warm sunshine. It's been one of those weeks where the garden just takes a battering 1 minute and then gets treated to a really good warm supply of sunshine. Everything looks really green and really full of energy as well. So the weather has definitely left its mark. Now, the greenhouse window vent unfortunately has got blown clean off in one of the stronger gusts of wind. I have no idea where it's gone. I'm trying to find it. I'm hoping I'm going to find it. Otherwise, my greenhouse is going to be missing a window. This is one of the windows on the top that you open to let a bit of heat out. Really, really annoying, but there is a bit of a positive side to this weather, and that is that our water butts are now completely full. Now, this year we had a good amount of rain over winter, but then we've had a really long dry spell, and I've been a little worried about the amount of water that we have. With it being June, plants are going to be thirsty as well, so this rainwater has really topped us up nicely and should keep us going into the summer. Now, because it has been so chaotic outside, I have had a really productive week inside the shed. I have had one of my big sowing sessions, and I've been sowing cucumbers, sweetcorn, swede, kale, cabbage, beans, all the things that will really take us through the summer and into the autumn. Now, all of these I've sown in my plug plant starters, and I absolutely love these things. I've got a good collection now, small ones and large ones. They really do grow each seed in its own little cell, and it means that the roots develop neatly. You don't have any problems pricking them out, you don't rip any roots apart, and it just saves that fiddly period because they do grow a little bit bigger before we have to pot them on. Now, as always, I use my seed sowing compost, which is a lighter, finer mix, and it doesn't swamp the seeds too much. It just does a really, really good job. But one of the things I do try and do is when we sow our seeds, there are particular depths, and I keep this really, really simple. If the seed is tiny, it pretty much just goes on the surface of the soil with a very light dusting of compost, barely covering the seed. A medium seed like kale and cabbage goes about 1 centimetre deep, and then the bigger seeds like sweetcorn and cucumbers, they're a good 2 centimetres. This is what has worked well for me over the years as a general rule of thumb, and it never lets me down. I get pretty good results from this. However, one thing I do like to do after sowing the seed, I do just like to gently tap the soil, the compost down, just to make sure the seed is in good contact with the soil. Then, once everything's sown, I give it a good misting with a bit of water. I find this is better than using a watering can because a watering can just wash the seeds around. Then I place all my seeds in my auto pot trays. They're in my shed. They are doing great. They just keep the water levels controlled in the pots, and it does a fantastic job. Now, added to that, light levels here in early June are brilliant. Even on cloudy days, the seedlings will get enough lights just to grow strong and steady. No stretching, no leggy seedlings, just good compact growth, which is what we want. However, outside in the Veggie Pod, I've also been sowing some more spring onions, radish and carrots. I love the Veggie Pods. They're brilliant at this time of year because the soil does warm up quite quickly when the sun comes out. But also when the rain comes along, it catches all that rain and gives them a perfect start. Now again, spring onions I just scatter on the surface. I don't bother too much about spacing them. They're very forgiving. Radish I do sow a little deeper, maybe a centimetre, and carrots I sow quite shallow. Then when it comes to watering, I just use a watering can with a rose so that the seeds don't float away. Now the great thing with the Veggie Pods is that even with heavy rain, the drainage is spot on. Nothing gets waterlogged. The sun will break through, warm the pods up fast, and you get that perfect mix of moisture and warmth. Now one of the other things I've been tackling is my fence line. We've got this strange plant that I've been talking about for a few years now. I think it started in one of my neighbours and it's crept along the fence line. It's crept all over the place. Every year we cut it back, but it comes back twice as fast. I don't actually know what the plant is. It was identified for me a few weeks ago, but I've forgotten what it is. But it's a very invasive mystery climber that just appears and takes over the place. Well, with the warm, wet weather we've had this week, it has been growing like mad. Even my neighbour has cut it down completely on her side. So I've been trying to cut it back down. It's great for bulking up our compost material, but I honestly think if we just stood still for long enough, it will cover us in its vines as well. It spreads so quickly and it's so big. It's one of those things, a bit like when we had ivy, we have to keep on top of it. We have to prune it regularly. If we even leave it for just a week or two, it will be halfway across the fence, trying to smother everything in sight. So it's had a really good trim back, which is probably perfect at this time of year. One of the things we've got to remember when we do prune anything back is to make sure there are no nesting birds in whatever we might be pruning. My tayberry and blackberries seem to have some birds nesting in them, so I can't prune those back, which I don't mind because I love the fact that we encourage birds. Now finally, I have had to say goodbye to some of my chard. Now I grow chard quite regularly. It's a great little crop. We're actually going to be using it in our recipe a bit later on. But I had some older plants that had been growing over the winter that had gone to seed, and I was hoping to save seeds from these. That was the plan. But the trouble is, these plants, when they go to bolt, they go very tall, about 6 foot tall, and the wind this week has just flattened it. Properly flattened it, which means it was pretty much no good. So I pulled it out and gave it to the chickens for them to eat. Now this is annoying because I was hoping to save seed from it, but I couldn't get around to it. I should have put a stake in, a bit of support in earlier, just because it was obvious that those plants were going to get very top heavy. But lesson learned, we'll know for next time. So the weather has really been the theme of the week and affected how we've been gardening this week as well. Early June is always a bit of a balancing act, but it's also one of my favourite times of year. Everything just feels with so much potential. Now we're going to head on down to the allotment and find out what's been going on down there. But in the meantime, let's find out what's going on in Supporters Club this week. Well, apologies for interrupting this podcast, but I just want to ask you a little favour. If you are enjoying this podcast, then please take a moment just to rate and review this podcast. It only takes a few seconds, but it genuinely means the world to us, and it really helps new listeners find the podcast. Now, if you would like to also go one step further in supporting what I do here, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. It's just £5 a month and it gives you access to extra behind the scenes podcast episodes where I share more of what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. The little details, the experiments, the things I'm trying out before they make it into the main show. Now on top of that, every month as a member you will also receive our seed pack, and each pack contains a selection of seeds that I have carefully chosen for that exact month. Things that you can sow right away and get growing straight out of the envelope. And along with the seeds you also get our mini newspaper. It's a lovely little thing. It includes sowing instructions as well as a list of jobs that you can tackle throughout the month and space for your own notes so you can keep track of what you're doing in your garden. Now as an example, this week I've sown some bolotto beans from the seed pack. This is a fantastic variety and one that I know that many of you are going to be growing along with me. So if you'd like to join the Supporters Club and keep this podcast going, then please head on over to the veggiegroundpodcast.co.uk. And as always, thank you so much for your support. Right, back to the gardening. Well, you find me down the allotment, and this is one of my favourite times of year to be down on the allotment, even with the heavy rain and strong winds that we have had this week. The plot has that really early summer feel to it, that just sense that summer is coming. The soil is warm, the air smells fresh, everything is growing at full speed, and it is like you can almost hear the plants stretching. It just feels like there's a lot of promise. Now over the weekend I have been popping down to the allotment every morning just for 2 to 3 hours each time, getting down here about 7 o'clock in the morning. One of the perks of working a 4-day week is that I have Fridays off, and honestly at this time of year it makes a huge difference. Early June is just one of those months where the more time we can spend on the plot, the better everything looks and the better everything becomes. In fact, I would say if you turn your back for just a day or two, something will have doubled in size. Now, watering has not been necessary at all on the allotment thanks to the rain, except, of course, in the greenhouse. Saturday when I was down on the allotment, the rain was something else. It was really, really heavy rain that just came out of nowhere. You know, stair rods coming down from the sky, and it was the kind that just really soaks you to the bone. It wasn't very pleasant. I wasn't wearing waterproofs in all honesty. I was wearing my normal gardening clothes, but the trouble I have with waterproofs when wearing them, especially as it is quite warm, is I just feel like I'm getting very damp on the inside. I'm very sweaty on the inside, and it's not a very pleasant working environment. However, the upside of all this rain is that the soil is absolutely perfect for weeding. At the moment, the weeds are just coming out like butter with the ground being so wet. It's those you just stick your hand in, you pull at the base very gently, and the whole root just slides out cleanly, and it's very, very satisfying. So I did spend a good chunk of time just clearing away weeds from the beds. One of those jobs that just feels like it is endless, and I spend a lot of time saying I spend weeding. And because the sun just keeps breaking through between the heavy showers, the beds just look fresh and tidy afterwards. It makes a big, big difference. Now my potatoes, they're doing well overall, but I mentioned last week that there's a stark difference between the early potatoes and the main crop potatoes. So my early potatoes were planted first, and we had that early May frost that really did seem to knock back my early potatoes, to the point the foliage now is only about 15 centimetres tall. I feel that these have been stunted by that frost. But what is really a different story is my main crop potatoes. They are standing about 45 centimetres tall now. They are full of energy. They look amazing. They've got that deep, healthy green look to the foliage that you really want to see. It does just look amazing. But at the same time, these plants are all still grown in the same soil, same plot, same conditions, just planted at different times. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen until harvest time, but it does look like planting early was a bit of a mistake. The mix of heavy rain And sunshine this week has, of course, done them the world of good as well. Now, what I have done, because these plants are growing quite well at the moment, I have mulched around all 3 of my potato beds, just with some straw that I got from our local supplier. Now, I do swear by using a mulch, and I find straw works quite well. It just helps lock in all that moisture that we've gained over this week, lock it into the soil and keep the weeds down. It does make the allotment just look a little bit tidier as well, and minimises the amount of work that I have to do. I'm a big fan of using mulches. I spoke about them time and time again, but I am such a big fan of using mulches. Now, back at home, I have found a couple of bags of seed potatoes that I'd completely forgotten about. They were tucked away behind some pots and sort of out of sight, out of mind. I've planted those up into pots. Now, you may be thinking it's a little bit too late. Well, one of these varieties is a second early, so I would say it might be a little bit too late to get a summer crop out of those. But something some people do, and I'm not a fan of this, but I'm doing it this year anyway, is to grow the second earlies for Christmas potatoes, new potatoes on the Christmas table. Now, usually these would be sown late June, July, maybe even August. And they're grown in the same way. They just moved into the greenhouse in the autumn. But whether it's going to work or not, we don't know. We will find out. The second variety was a main crop variety. It is, again, a little bit late for those, but we will see how we get on. They might be okay. We'll find out. There's no harm in trying at the end of the day. Otherwise, those seed potatoes are just going to go to waste. Now, back here, I have mulched around the beans as well. They are really loving the warm spell that we have had. They can see them growing quite significantly, and they're starting to wrap themselves around, twisting their way around the hazel sticks. So they're doing quite well. Very, very pleased to see that. The straw mulch will help them as well, especially preventing that soil from drying out too quickly when the sun does appear. But it is looking very, very promising. Now, one of the other areas that I have been focusing on has been the boundary area. The boundary area that runs alongside my neighbour's plot. Now, that plot has been vacant for a couple of years, and I've mentioned this quite a bit in the past. The weeds there are completely and utterly wild. The weeds are up above my waist. They are so tall, and because of that, they have this advancing situation where they seem to come into my boundary area. It's really, really annoying, and it makes that area very, very difficult to control and to really, for my own use, keep on top of. But I have spent a bit of time just trying to get on top of what I can in there. I've made a dent in it, but it's still, I don't feel it is good enough. And I'm really trying to battle with what I can do here. I don't know what I can do. I really need somebody to take on that plot so that it becomes that much easier. I have made a dent in it. I will say that. I have made a dent on it, and all I can hope is that as long as I keep trying to keep it down, that we will get better and better with it. So that's what's been going on here on the allotment this week. A real mix based around this heavy rain, strong winds, sunny spells. The plants are loving it overall, and the allotment is coming along really nicely. Everything is looking full. We've harvested some more rhubarb, we've harvested some more asparagus, we've even harvested some peas and many other good stuff as well. So it's producing food for us as well, which is very, very important. But it's now time, head on back home, where I'm going to meet you back in the podding shed. But in the meantime, let's find out what's going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef's got with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Well, it's time for our recipe of the week. You will find, of course, this recipe on the veggiepodcast.co.uk. UK. Now this one came about because I had a handful of early potatoes that I lifted from the garden, and I also had some chard that I harvested because the chard plant was just on the edge of bolting. I've already mentioned that we had some that has bolted. Well, I had some more that I just wanted to get a harvest out of just to try and make the most of it. Now I brought all these into the kitchen and gave them all a good wash, and from there on I decided it was time to cook. And it's something about cooking fresh vegetables that I've just harvested that makes the meal, in my opinion, taste all the better. Now I started by halving the potatoes and then getting them in a pan of salted water and just got those boiling. While they were boiling, I sliced up a small onion, just nothing fancy, just some thin slices so that they soften nicely. In the frying pan with a bit of olive oil, I just let those onions cook gently, get that lovely sweet smell from them. Once the onions were soft, I then added in a couple of cloves of crushed garlic, and that smell in the kitchen was just fantastic. Now by this point the potatoes were just tender, so I just quickly drained those over the sink into a colander, and then I poured the potatoes into the frying pan. Get that little sizzle off the oil as they just hit. Now I just cooked those in the frying pan, stirring occasionally just for the edges to crisp up a little and just get a bit of colour on the edges as well. And then it was time for the chard. Now I chopped up the stems and leaves separately. The stems go into the pan first because they do take a little bit longer to cook, being that little bit thicker, and then went in the leaves. Now these have been chopped up as well, but the good thing is with chard you get a mix of yellow, white and red. They look fantastic in a pan. After a couple of minutes, the leaves had wilted down beautifully, so I added in a knob of butter and a squeeze of lemon. The butter just gave it a bit of richness, and the lemon just lifts everything completely, especially with a chard, which can be a bit earthy. A bit of salt and pepper went in, and that was it. A very simple and quick meal, and it honestly tasted like summer on a plate. Now this was perfect as a really light lunch, but you could also use it as a side dish should you want to, or bulk it out with a handful of chickpeas or a bit of bacon as well. So that is the recipe of the week. You will find it over on the veggiegroundpodcast.co.uk. Well, I'm back in the podding shed now, and before we get into this week's topic, I just want to give you a quick bee update. I have now added a super to the hive, and if you're not a beekeeper, a super is basically an extra box. It's a slightly smaller than the main box, but it sits on top of the main hive. The main hive is also known as the brood box, which is where the queen lays and the colony raises its young. But a super is like the bee's attic. It's where they're going to store their surplus honey once they've filled the brood frames. When I checked on them this week, they've drawn out most of the brood frames, and the hive was really starting to feel very busy. That warm humming kind of busy where you just can tell they're building up fast. They were bringing in loads of pollen as well, bright yellows and creams, which is always a good sign. So adding the super now gives them room to expand upwards before they start feeling cramped, and it means they can take advantage of the nectar flowing that is just starting to happen. Now, I've got to say, they were calm, steady and working beautifully, so the super is on, and hopefully over the next few weeks they will start moving up into it. And of course I will keep you posted. I'm really excited with this beekeeping, as you can no doubt tell. Now, I want to talk a bit about successional sowing, because early June is one of the best times to really get into the habit of successional sowing. It's one of those things that sounds technical, but really all it is sowing a little, but sowing it often. That way you don't end up with a glut, a load of vegetables, followed by nothing. Now, with the cost of living, which it's quite high, it's something I really want to focus on at the moment as well. This is one of the easiest ways to save money. Tray of compost and a handful of seeds can give you weeks of salads. You don't need a big amount of space either, just a bit of consistency. Like so much in gardening, consistency is king. Now, There is a rhythm that I find works quite well in my garden, and these are all seeds that you could sow now. So radish, great example. I sow those every week. They're quick, they're reliable, they're perfect for filling in gaps. Lettuce, something that I eat quite a bit of every 2 to 3 weeks, especially the loose leaf type that we can treat like cut and come again salads. Spring onions every 2 to 3 weeks, scatter into a line or sow quite directly where you want them to grow, and pretty quickly they give you a good crop. Beetroot every 3 weeks, small batches, but that just keeps the beetroot steady, keeps the harvest steady. Dwarf French beans, something we've spoken about quite a bit lately. Every 3 to 4 weeks we can sow those. And if we sow them now, we'll get a crop in August. If we sow again in the beginning of July, we'll get a crop in September. So it's definitely worth keeping a load of those going. Turnips every 2 to 3 weeks. These are quick, they're easy, but I don't think they get as much recognition as they should. Kohlrabi is another example that would fit in with turnips as well. Herbs such as coriander, parsley, dill, every 3 weeks we're going to sow one of these. Well, what I do is I'll sow coriander 1 week, parsley the following week, dill the next week, and then repeat. And basil we also fit in at some point as well. Kale and chard, one sowing now, one in July, and that gives you long-term crops, not weekly ones. Now this time of year, as we are harvesting a lot of crops, and crops do come out quite quickly, and that's going to happen more and more. Our overwinter crops, our early salads, anything that's bolted or been battered by the weather, instead of leaving bare soil, we want to drop something in straight away. And this is where, again, constantly having young plants or constantly sowing plants gives you the opportunity to drop some of the plants that I've just mentioned in. If you've got a greenhouse or sheltered spot, of course, you can get away with late sowings of cucumbers or courgettes as well. Now, I have an approach about this. Every Sunday I will sow something. Doesn't matter what, just something. A tray of lettuce, a row of beetroot, a handful of beans. It takes me 5 minutes, but it just keeps this whole system ticking over. Sunday is a day I do spend, after I've seen my bees, of course, I spend at home, might have a roast dinner cooking or something like that, and just spending a few minutes in between sowing some of these seeds just works at having a routine. Now, the thing I love about successional sowing is that it gives your garden a rhythm. It gives your garden a routine. You're always adding, you're always refreshing, you're always keeping things moving, and more importantly, you are gaining more food. It's not about strict rules. It's just about paying attention to what's coming out. That's really what it's all about, and what's also to go in or you want to eat in a few weeks' time. Really, really easy to successionally sow. Follow my guide and you can't go far wrong. Now, before I go, just want to say a big thank you to everyone that has been in touch this week. I've had a lovely message from Stuart Jackson over on the blog. He said, "Morning Richard, I just wanted to update you with me. School gardening is going well with your help, so thank you for the Supporters Club. At home, my charity table outside has taken over £250 this season so far, and I've really enjoyed the last few podcasts, so thank you and good luck with the bees." Stuart has absolutely made my day hearing that the school garden is thriving, your charity table is going well. This is exactly what this community is all about. Over on Spotify, Gary left a review saying he's a first-time listener and he loves the podcast, especially the bite-sized sections, excuse the pun. Gary, welcome aboard. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave a review. Now, if you would be good enough to leave us a review, then please do. Also, please consider becoming a member of the Veggie Pod Podcast Supporters Club. Details on that on our website. If you would like to get in touch, you can email me, richard@theveggiegrowerpodcast.co.uk. You can leave a comment on the blog post for this episode, or you can leave us a voicemail, which doesn't cost you anything other than your normal data charges. I always love hearing what you're getting up to in your own gardens and allotments. You can also find me on social media. Just search for the Veg Grower Podcast. Well, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, please take care.